Hey, and welcome back to Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. My name is Mark Pattison, former NFL player, now climbing the 7 summits with Mount Everest, 11 months away and counting. I cannot wait, and welcome to another amazing podcast. Okay, here is the quote this week. It is from the famous actor Clint Eastwood, one of my favorites. I don't believe in pessimism. If something doesn't come up the way you want, forge ahead. If you think it's going to rain, it will. And I think my guest this week totally sums that up. He's full of optimism. His name is J.J. Birden. He is a fellow NFL player back in the day. He went to the University of Oregon, my arch rival coming from the University of Washington myself. But this guy was unique in size. He was 5'9", 5'10", something like that, 157 pounds, probably dripping sweat. And he managed to not just thrive down at the University of Oregon, but go on and have a very successful career in the NFL. He did play 9 years, so phenomenal accomplishment. I think, though, one of the biggest things that he did accomplish in his life, and I was really blown away, is the fact that he's been married, number one, to his wife for a very long time, and she is the rock, the anchor for him. They had 3 kids. A circumstance came up where he had to take on 5 foster kids. He didn't have to, they wanted to, and they did that. So if you can imagine 8 critters running around the house, man, a lot of chaos there, but they managed it, they got through it, and now they've only got 2 kids left in the house. And so I think he has felt very blessed for having that experience, and he's done some really cool stuff too. And what he does today is go around the country. He talks to corporations in his public speaking. He's written a book, and it's really about finding greatness. It's about getting the best out of what you can do. There's a lot of different topics that he talks about, but at the end of the day, it's really the heart of a line coming out, and nobody's saying you can't do anything that you don't want to do. So it's pretty cool, great story. So more on JJ in just a minute. And if you want to find out what's going on with me, of course, my climbing, my public speaking, I've now got a book up. It's a playbook and a journal called Finding Your Summit. Go figure. And it's all about the strategies that you can use towards really elevating your game to where you want to go. I encourage you to check that out along with the e-learning course. So, and if you haven't already done so, please go into iTunes. That is where you can rate and you can review on Finding Your Summit. It really helps. And these stories are so cool. They're so inspiring. I'm so blessed that I get to be on this side of the mic to hear all these amazing tales of people doing really incredible things. So the more popular it gets, the more people that can listen to these different folks that are out there doing and taking on their own battles. And finally, this pod is sponsored by Cascade Mountain Tech, the best outdoor gear from the Pacific Northwest, which is where I'm from. So if you go to cascademountaintech.com and type in Finding Your Summit 15, you're going to get 15% off your next purchase. So go make that happen, okay? All right, let's go listen to JJ. Here we go. Hey everybody, it's Mark Pattison back again with another phenomenal episode of Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. And this week, I have a fellow NFL player on the pod, J.J. Birden, who actually went to my very adversary school, the University of Oregon, back in the day. And so it's going to be a lot of fun to talk to J.J. about his career. And to me, this is really about the little engine that could. And we're going to get into that story and what that means. But J.J., first of all, how are you doing?
Doing fantastic, Mark. It's good to be on the show and good to connect with you as well, being we have this history that we kind of didn't really know about, but now we do.
That's right. Of course, I went to the University of Washington. I was a Husky, and back in the day, we did never lose to Oregon, and then things got flip-flopped around a bit for about 20 years, and Oregon just went on an amazing tear and has continued to have a very high level of football play and win-loss record. And Washington has finally kind of clawed its way back in contention. Yep. But, you know, it's been a long time, and that's just the ebb and flow of, I think, life, which that represents. You know, nothing is ever perfect, and things go up, things go down. And so I want to get into that a little bit about you. So first of all, it's amazing to me that I'm really almost 6'3", 200 pounds. And I don't know if I was your prototypical type of receiver, but on the other side of that, 5'10" isn't that short, but certainly at 157 pounds, when you take on those hits and everything else, I mean, you started off as a track star. How did you emerge into that whole space of playing football and finding that calling card?
Well, I tell you, I was all about track and field. That's where my heart was. I had dreams of going to the Olympics, and I played football in high school, and I was the number one wide receiver in the state of Oregon. But at 5'9", 133 pounds, every Division I school that came through just said you should go to Division III or go to junior college, and I took it as a personal insult. I'm like, really? You don't think I can play at the next level? So I knew I would get a track scholarship because my senior year, I was the number 2 ranked long jumper in the country coming out of high school. So every college track program that recruited me, I would always ask them, what do you think about me trying football one year? And every single Pac-10 school and schools outside the Pac-10 said no, except for Oregon. Oregon said, you come run for us. We'll do whatever we can, at least give you a chance to walk on.
Yep.
And that's all I wanted was an opportunity to prove everybody wrong. I wasn't trying to make it to the league. I just wanted to prove everyone wrong.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's interesting that back in the day when I was being recruited, my sophomore and junior year as a wide receiver, we had an excellent quarterback, all-state quarterback in the state of Washington. And then my senior year, my guy who would ultimately become the Husky quarterback, Hugh Millen, was a year behind me in high school, and he was too big and too tall and too lanky and too slow to play quarterback. So they yanked me in. I played quarterback that year, and then Oregon ended up recruiting me as quarterback. So if I would have went there, I could have been tossing balls to you. So, well, that's
right.
cool. So, yeah. So anyways, so for you make this transition in terms of going from having an opportunity to go to the University of Oregon, and then of course you wanted to go out and test your strength, test your football prowess on the gridiron with those guys, and obviously something clicked, and they saw something where you then transitioned on a full-time basis and made that your main and core thing that you were doing at the University of Oregon.
Yeah, it was really interesting because when I got to Oregon, I ran that first year, and it wasn't like the football coaches were knocking down my door. And I realized that I needed to go create the opportunity because they weren't thinking about me. So that spring, I started secretly watching the spring practices. I remember being up in Autzen Stadium in the stands, looking at the athletes and measuring them. And I think Mark, was like 3 practices. I said, okay, I can play with these guys. Somehow I got to get noticed. So the very next day I go to practice again. I'm standing on the field by the goalposts, just daring some coach to come kick me off. But first I'm going to tell him why I'm there. And here comes Rich Brooks. At the end of practice, he walks all the way down the field and he goes, Birden, I know who you are. I saw you in the stands. What are you doing out here? Coach, I want to play. And he's like, really? And we just kind of went back and forth. And he said, well, come to my office tomorrow. Let's talk about it. And we had a 30-minute conversation, Mark, and it was really me convincing him I could play. But the track coaches had already talked to him and said, hey, you should at least give him a shot. So Brooks said, okay, we're going to let you walk on. We'll see what you got. And the doorway was open. And again, I was just trying to, create that chance to show everybody I could play. And Brooks gave me the shot.
Yeah, so I want to draw some parallels here, and then I want to ask you about something called a chip that maybe you had or maybe you didn't have, okay? So when I went to the University of Washington, I was on a full ride scholarly. They recruited me as a wide receiver. That's where I went. And I quickly found myself completely lost and buried in the program. I was 6'2", about 181 pounds, could not bench my weight. And as I looked out onto the field on that first day of fall ball as a freshman, I looked out there, and what I discovered is that I did not fit with those other guys. Those other guys were 19, 20, 21 years old. They had also been former All-American in high school, but they were big, they were strong, they were fast, they were confident, and they just looked and played and acted like the way a guy that's going to play in the Pac-10, which was the league, obviously, as you know, back in those days, against teams like Oregon, USC, Stanford, UCLA, and the others. And what I really need to do is really pay attention to the program that Coach James had put in front of us, which was really that pyramid of success, what I'm calling now my summits, module of accomplishment. But it's really putting that game plan in front of you to make sure that you have a roadmap to at least put yourself in a position. And then when that preparation meets opportunity, you get your chance and then you make the most of it. And that pretty much is the way it played for me. But it took me 3 years and a lot of dark days of running stairs and doing things that nobody else is watching. The coaches weren't watching for me to put myself in that position. So I want to ask you about the mindset for you, because now we put yourself, you can't change your height and your weight and things like that. I mean, you can probably add some pounds on by eating a little bit more protein powder or starting to pump iron. But when you were like, again, I called you, these are my words, not yours, but the little engine that could, the smaller guy on the field that not everybody was, pounding on your door to offer scholarships. And everything really got back to your size, not necessarily your talent, but your size. And so when you got to Oregon, when you got in front of Coach Brooks, who also recruited me, was that a motivating factor? I mean, did you have a self-realization like I did, or were you just coming from a different perspective on, I've got this chip about they don't think I can do it, and so I'm going to prove everybody wrong?
That was it. I had the major chip on my shoulder, but you have to understand there was a history of me being in this situation. My whole life, I was always the little guy in grade school, the little guy in junior high, in high school. I was always the little guy. So I was constantly proving myself and surprising everyone. So when Brooks said yes, that's all I wanted. And then when I got to fall camp, I remember there's two, Mark. I get to fall camp the first day and they have the depth chart. There was about 14 receivers there, only 5 play. I was number 13.
Yeah.
So the kind of mindset I have was like, how fast could I move up the depth chart? I saw it as a challenge because physically I knew I had the ability because I'm a track guy. I knew I had the ability, but what they didn't know was the heart, the head. They didn't know how bad I really wanted and what I was willing to sacrifice to get it. So it was more about proving them wrong and getting the shot and then learning as I go, because now all of a sudden you're at the college level. It's a little different being a student of the game. But the first week, Brooks was like, oh my goodness, we had no idea you could play the way you are playing. I said, because you were too busy measuring me from the outside. You didn't know how bad I really wanted it. So again, wasn't to get to the NFL. It was just to make the team. And I basically was number 2 for 2 years. I caught 3 balls my freshman year, 3 balls my sophomore year. So again, I wasn't your prototypical NFL player, and it was still not even a thought in my mind at that point.
Yeah, so no question you've got heart of a lion, which is what we're talking about. And I think that's where so many people that listen to this podcast, they need to really stay with that inner North Star in terms of where they want to go and who they want to be. And so much is not about what you look like on the exterior, but what kind of drive you have on the interior of what that makeup is, because anything is doable. Anything can be accomplished if you put your mind to it. I don't mean that literally like, you're going to go, I want to play in the NBA or something, but right. In terms of being in the game, you can become an executive or you could be a business leader or something else like that. But in terms of your playing time, I mean, you mentioned that you just caught a couple balls, the freshman, sophomore. For me, I redshirted. We were stacked at wide receiver. We were really rolling back in those days. And so we had almost all the receivers and all the quarterbacks went off into the NFL, when they graduated. So I had to wait my turn. And so it really wasn't until my 3rd or 4th year, before things really started to take shape. For you, how many years before you became the guy and people were really starting to take notice of you?
Ooh, that's a good question. Because when I got my chance to become the guy, which was my 3rd year, I broke my arm the 5th game against Nebraska.
Yeah.
So I think I had like 29 catches. And then my senior year, I severely sprained my ankle the 6th game of the season. I think I caught 30 balls. I had 1 touchdown. So when I got the chance to become the guy, I never really developed into the guy because I got 2 injuries. And so again, the thought of me playing in the NFL was just so far-fetched and so ridiculous that, again, it never crossed my mind because I was constantly dealing with obstacles, the broken arm against Nebraska, then recovering from that, and then the severely sprained ankle. So again, my focus was track. I just figured football was something I got to do 4 years. Great, but let's focus on nationals. And I qualified for the 1988 Olympic trials. So that's where my focus was.
Yeah. So again, the name of this podcast is called Finding Your Summit, all about people overcoming adversity and finding their way. And I think adversity comes in various shapes and forms and colors and shapes. And by that, what I mean is that as college football athletes, so we'll just stay with that for a minute. You put all your heart, your mind, your body, your soul into that singular purpose of being out there. And of course, you're getting your college paid for, and that's so important. But at the same time, considering the physical task and requirements and what the coaches ask of you, and the amount of time that you spend in the weight room and during spring ball and everything else, just to try to be out there, and then you finally get your chance. And then you get knocked off that block, and then the next guy that they've recruited that's coming in, and then you got to fight your way back. And I mean, it is taxing, right? And you're there. I was there at the University of Washington, redshirted, as I said, for 1 year. So I was up there for 5 years, and that's a big chunk of anybody's life. And so for you, when you're going through that, I mean, was it just devastation, or were you like, okay, it's another one. It's another one of these times where I just got to reset the bar, and I'm going to come back stronger than ever, and, look out.
Yeah, that was my mindset. It was another setback, and what's that saying? Setbacks are the perfect opportunities for comebacks. And that was my whole thought was like, okay, another setback. We just got to bounce back, get stronger. And never did I ever flinch and think of quitting. Okay, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I should just focus on track. No, it was, let's stay with this and finish out what we started. So, in one of my presentations, I talk about that because setbacks, I think, are perfect opportunities for breakthroughs. You either let that moment take you down and take you out, or you allow that moment to take you to bigger and better things. And those injuries made me work harder. They made me hungrier. They made me put on more weight. I mean, I just went after it even more so to put myself in a better chance to be more successful when I got back on the field.
Yeah. So you talk about, setbacks and then breakthroughs. I mean, there's no question I wouldn't be on my path to climbing the 7 summits and with Everest in front of me in 11 months if I hadn't had a serious setback 7-8 years ago. And it's kind of realizing that, stepping into the fear, going forward, and then realizing that you can do things that you never imagined, that if you would have put yourself back there, like you're thinking at that time, when these things happen, like the world is coming to an end, when the reality is that there's so much more life that's out there for all of us to go and really get after. And by the way, we talked about this before we went live, but I just want to give the quick shout out to Thane Cleland, who I played with at the University of Washington. He played with you in high school in Oregon, right? And Thane, I just, again, wanted to give a shout out because I'm going to CC him on Facebook when this pod comes out. Great teammate, great guy, great talent, and glad to have played with him.
Yeah, Thane's a stud. I learned a lot watching Thane, but my best memory of Thane, and he'll ask him about the mile relay my junior year at the district meet. I think it's a story in my book, but Thane and I ran the mile relay. It's just a great story, but Thane believed in me and asked me to run the mile relay, the final leg. He promised me he'd have a 30-yard lead, and he did. So I just had to bring it in home.
That's awesome. I love that. Okay, we'll give the shout out. Okay, so you go to University of Oregon. It turns out to be a great experience for you, and now you get drafted in the 8th round by the Cleveland Browns, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And
216th pick.
Yeah. No, listen, I was in the 7th round. So, yeah. So, again, our careers are very similar, and that's back in the day when they had 12 rounds. And so, I'm not sure if it's a better system today or it was back then. It doesn't really matter. The bottom line is getting on the field. You had a 9-year career. You played with some different teams. And again, I want to talk to you now about again, you enter in the league when you're in 8th round, just like I was the 7th round. You're not really guaranteed that anything is going to happen. The 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th, pretty good shot that they're going to make the team. They are going to make the team, and everybody else is just a wild card. Mm-hmm. And so for you to scratch and claw and come in and do the things that you need to do, and what people don't understand, I mean, it's a 9-year career, but like my career, I was up and down. I got traded and cut and all kinds of stuff. And so it's just playing with your emotions. And so for you, what was your experience like playing in the NFL?
Well, the interesting part about my NFL career was I did not have an auspicious start. When I was drafted in the 8th round, 216th pick, I was in the middle of the track season. I was getting ready for Pac-10s, going to nationals, going to Olympic trials, and then I get this call because I didn't think I was going to get drafted at all. And the Browns call me, and they're like, "Hey, you got to come out next week for mini camp." And I'm like, "I'm getting ready for nationals," So I decided to go out just to really see. And at this point, Mark, I'm not thinking of playing the NFL. I'm thinking about, can I make the Olympic team? So I go out there the following week, third practice, I tear up my ACL ligament in the Browns mini camp.
Ugh.
So as you mentioned earlier, being devastated, just frustrated. I've worked so hard for my senior year in track and field, and now my ACL is torn. And so I had that moment where I felt sorry, but then I'm a very positive person, and positive people see the bright side of everything. I thought, well, they drafted me NFL. Let's go to the NFL now. I get to be on IR for a year and see what this is all about. And so I spent the whole year in IR and watching and learning and getting healthy. And that was the year, Mark, that I started to believe I could play in the NFL, because prior to that, I didn't. And once you got your belief system where it needs to be, now you're going to back that up with the work too. So wasn't the right start I wanted, but eventually it worked out.
Hey, this pod is sponsored by Laird Superfoods. So many products to choose from your InstaFuel, your coffee, your tea, your smoothies. And I love the superfood creamer and use the hydration powders like the beets, the coconut, the matcha, the turmeric to mix all into my 7 Summit smoothie. And it's so good. Log on to lairdsuperfood.com and get your 20% off when you use the code MARKP20. Okay? So get your Laird Superfood, and I guarantee it will help fuel your journey. Yeah. So just for some clarification, so IR for the layperson who doesn't know what that means is injured reserve, and what that also means is you get paid from the NFL. So essentially, you get to be around. You're lifting. You're at some point in time you start to participate back with the team. You just can't play, and that's what that means. And you get paid. And so again, you're probably assessing how you see yourself as compared to the other receivers, the other players, the other DBs on the team. And again, probably very quietly, you're starting to have more and more confidence about what you can do and your prospects in terms of playing in the NFL. So one of the things that was really cool. And so I'm relating this story to you and, the little engine that could, the smaller guy that made it into the NFL. You played 9 years. You had all these different experiences. You had some setbacks in terms of both knees being blown out, but you kept coming back. There's another guy that you played with that I think kind of fits that same category, and that's Joe Montana. So Joe is a guy I played against. It was drafted by the Raiders, but I played for a couple of years also down in New Orleans. So we were in that NFC West. I'm not sure how New Orleans fits in the West. I mean, it doesn't matter, but back in the day, right, it was a weird match. But so we played them twice a year. So I got to see Joe play, and it was just uncanny to see him with his slight frame. And he was always ahead of everybody on the field, much like Tom Brady is today. So from your perspective, being the receiver on the other end of catching those balls and being with Joe, how do you see like his framework? I mean, his mental approach to the game, the guy that, nobody thought he'd ever do anything. I think he was a 4th rounder from Notre Dame. He ends up being his Hall of Fame quarterback.
Yeah, I was impressed with Joe right away from day one, because not only was he down to earth, but here's a guy when he joined the Chiefs, his 15th year, he's 36 years old. He's already won 4 Super Bowls. He's won all these other accolades. But the guy came in like he was a rookie. We used to say he studied like a rookie, he prepared like a veteran, and he led like a pro. I mean, he was so hungry to finish his career on point. And right away, I'm thinking like, okay, success leaves clues. What can I learn from this guy? And I watched him like a hawk. And I was always so impressed with his preparation. Like you said, he was always a step ahead of everyone, which really caused us to step up our preparation, because we needed to see what Joe saw, because he was always releasing the ball before we got to the top of our break, and just, painstaking attention to the details. But it just impressed me that someone like him did not rest on his laurels, his previous success. He didn't become complacent. He was always had that mindset, what's next? How can I get better? How can I improve this team? And he led us right to the AFC Championship game. So Joe can still throw the rock and play very, very well.
Yeah, there's another guy that ended up going there too. I played my rookie year with Marcus Allen. So I did a talk last week in Florida, and I was talking about those two guys. The two guys I was talking about was Jim Plunkett and Marcus Allen. And I think one of the things that you just said is really cool. I haven't really thought about it that way, but you're right, which is success leaves clues. And for those guys, I was never a great NFL player, and we all have our different roles, but I made it just like you made it. And so I'm in the club and you're in the club, right? And that's all that matters at this point in time. But when I look back, I did look at what those guys did, and to see and be in the huddle with those two guys that had won the Heisman Trophy, two guys who'd been Super Bowl MVPs, and two guys who had separately won a Super Bowl. How often are you around those things called greatness? And again, there were certain things, not just talent, but things that go beyond talent that have created that success. And so, like you said, success is clues, and then the follow up to that, to me at least, is that if there are clues, then you need to be paying attention. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I watched Joe, I watched Marcus, everything that they did, because here's two of the greatest to ever play the game. And I get the opportunity to be in the huddle with them, to be in the locker room with them, to be in the meeting room with them. I just said, what can I learn from them? And it was so evident in terms of why these guys had very long, successful careers.
Yeah. So let's talk about at the end of your career. I think the NFLPA, the NFL Players Association today, does a fantastic job of really helping to transition out, a lot of the programs that they have now with the trust, and set up curriculums and support around trying to help mentor guys from point A to point B. But back in the day when you and I were getting out, it was just literally they set you free and then you're off and you're like in a free fall, like so many guys. And, as I've talked about before, imagine to the listener doing something for, in my case, 20 years. So I'm going back to like third grade, right? And, you manage your way through grade school, high school, college, and you keep going up the pyramid. And ultimately, you keep playing. And so now I'm 29 years old and I get cut. And I'm like, okay, where do I go now? And I put all that energy into one singular activity. And it's my passion, it's my focus. I would have done it for free. I did do it for free for many years. I was like a little kid on the playground. And so where do you go? And so for you, how is that transition in terms of making that switch over from point A to point B?
The transition was a little different for me than I think other players, because quite frankly, as you can tell, I never expected to play in the NFL. When I got there, I thought, wow, this is amazing. What a privilege. And I just took it year by year. And I remember when I found out that the fourth year was when players are vested. And I thought, well, let's see if we can play 4 years.
Yeah.
And then it was, let's see if we can play 5 years. And then it was every year. But right around year 5 and 6, Mark, I was always thinking about transition, life after football, because I made sure I graduated at Oregon. I always wanted to have a plan B or just something to be able to move on to when my career was over. So I started networking with a lot of people, doctors and business people, just making contacts, hoping that I would have some options when my career was over. So my last year in Atlanta, when I tore my ACL ligament and I went through rehab and I was 100%, it was easy for me to say, you know what, I'm done. I got to play 9 years in a game that very few get to play. I made a little bit of money to get started in life after football, and we retired, but I was ready to move on to something else.
But did you have that something else? Because it's one thing to make contacts and network, and it's another thing to channel that energy into something that is new after you've been in the pinnacle of any gladiator sport. To have that kind of attention, you make a little bit of money and you're with the guys in the locker room, all the things that go with that, the lifestyle. And it's just a hard transition. So what did you do from your exit from the NFL?
I tell you what I did. I took what money we had and I invested in 6 companies, made small investments in 6 different companies, several in the medical industry. 1 was an internet company and 3 were medical-based companies. And over the year, 3 failed and 3 survived. Two were medical companies in Kansas City that I ran, and one was a fitness equipment company in Atlanta where I was a minority owner and the West Coast sales manager. So I immediately transitioned into running those companies, and I ran them for like 10 years. So when I say transition, I really did transition. When the game is over, I moved into this businessman role because I had a dream of like, I always wanted to be this businessman, this mogul, this guy who owned companies and ran companies. I had these dreams of doing that. And so it's what I did for about 10, 11 years right after my career ended, and love what I was doing, but it just, the challenges from the corporate standpoint and just dealing with some of the things you couldn't control. Like I had two medical-based companies, so I was always fighting with Medicare, and so I eventually got out of it, and I wanted more control over what I do. And now today you see what I do as a speaker and author. So.
Yeah, no, it's great stuff, and we'll get into that in a minute. I want to go back to this word challenges that you just you just mentioned. And you're married, you have 3 kids of your own, and then somewhere in the earth, God came down and asked you to adopt 5. And I'm trying to understand how that whole story played out, because now you're sitting in a family really at 10 between you and your wife, your 3 kids. There's 5, and then you have another 5 kids coming into your family, into your lives, which must have been complete chaos. But tell me what led to something like that happening for you.
Well, we got a call about 10 and a half years ago, 11 years ago, from my nephew who lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma. My sister lived out there, my brother-in-law, and my 5 nieces and nephews. And my nephews just said, "Hey, uncle, there's just chaos going on here. Can you come check on us?" So I'm thinking like, okay, well, let me go check on them. And 24 hours later, I'm on a plane. And when I get there, I realized that, oh, this is not what I thought it was. There's definitely some problems and issues going on here. And then 24 hours later, I'm in a courthouse standing before a judge, and the judge is telling me that we're going to take the 5 nieces and nephews and put them in separate foster homes. You're the next of kin. What would you like to do? So just imagine checking on your nieces and nephews, and the judge tells you, what would you like to do? But as you know, in sports, in life, sometimes we got to call an audible, right?
Yep.
And I go, "Judge, let me call my wife first," and I get on the phone with my wife, Raina. 5 seconds later, she's like, "We got to take the children. Could you sleep at night knowing we could have done something?" And I was like, "No." So we took all 5 of the children, and the rest is history. But yeah, it was chaos. It was nuts. But it was beautiful. I mean, not only did I feel we've impacted their lives, they also impacted our life as well. So it's been a mutual benefit.
Hey, I'm excited to introduce our new partner of the pod, Cascade Mountain Tech, an outdoor brand from the Pacific Northwest, which is where I'm from, that offers a great selection of trekking poles. They're incredible. Super coolers, camp chairs, LED lighting, and much more. Right now, Cascade Mountain Tech is offering 15% off your first order by using the code FindingYourSummit15. That is, FindingYourSummit15 when you check out at CascadeMountainTech.com. I mean, look at that's a big slice of pie to take on. I mean, you almost have your own football, offensive or defensive squad right there, right? And and now you've got a lot of critters running around your house, and just not only the 5 that you saved their life, but also integrating those kids in with both you and your wife, and how that dynamic works, but also with your 3 kids who you guys had, and so. I mean, I can only imagine what that must be like in terms of I've got 2 girls, and they're now 20 and 22. But you're running left, running right to the little league soccer and baseball and football or whatever gender the kids are. But it just must have been and has been a life of just craziness. So I can certainly understand why you were working your ass off, left and right to try to help support those people, but. I mean, I'll tell you what, I really believe in this, and that is about paying it forward and doing so in a way that you're humble and kind, and you really appreciate others that come along, because, the lives that you can affect in terms of how you touch them, being the role model, both for yourself and your wife, and that I don't know what happened to their parents. It really doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that they had a home, they could stay together, and you provided that guidance and that leadership in your life. To make that happen.
Yeah, I tell you, Mark, it helps having an incredible wife. I mean, my wife and I have been married 29 years next month. And I remember telling her, I said, "Hey, I won't bring the children home. I don't want to do anything that's going to disrupt our family, our marriage." And my wife is like, "No, we're taking the children." And we've been a team. You got to be a team, and all of a sudden you add
Yeah.
5 more to the family, and it was pretty crazy. I mean, just the adjustment the first 6 months, and who's going to room with who, and moving people around, and then you got a parent teacher conference, and we're just tag teaming, and she's here and I'm there, and it was almost comical. But now they've been growing up, moving out. We only have 2 left, and
Wow.
that's my 2 youngest nieces. My youngest just graduated yesterday. My other niece is 22. She still lives here. So my wife and I are kind of looking forward to the day when they're all gone.
If there's one guy who gets, A plus, it's you, and with little time off. So look, last several years now, you've been, as you mentioned, speaking and also writing different books. You've got a book out there called When Opportunity Knocks, 8 Surefire Ways to Take Advantage. So can you tell me you don't have to go through all 8, but when you're out on the speaking circuit and you're communicating, I know you have a bunch of different messages, but just give me a couple nuggets of how people can really excel their life and move forward.
Yeah, with that one book, it's something I always wanted to write because, as you can attest to as yourself, we've seen people have opportunities to do something, to achieve a goal, to achieve a dream, to achieve something that they want. And for whatever reason, they missed out on it, or they missed it in some way or another. And I feel that I'm like the walking, example of someone who sees opportunities throughout my life. And so I wanted to write kind of a blueprint. Here's what it takes to seize your opportunities. And through my chapters, I really start with some basic concepts, and I take people through this process of, focusing on, like, what's your why, understanding your goal, your passion. Why do you do what you do, and how important that is, and then helping them understand you got to have some kind of game plan.
So
This is
wait. I want you to stop for a minute.
okay.
Okay. So I want to go back to why, because this is a really, really strong one for me.
Hmm.
Okay. I'm going to throw out the reason why you need to have a strong why,
Hmm.
and then see if you agree or disagree. And the reason why, just like I'm climbing these mountains today, and I'm going on Everest, this next year, and I've been on these other ones where it's been minus 80 degrees and wind blowing and everything else. And if you don't have a super strong why, then it's just way too easy to quit. I had a super strong why in college when I was playing football because once I got there, then people were saying behind my back, which I could actually hear, overheard, of like, what a waste of scholarship. So my why was to prove them wrong. Your
Right
why
on.
back in college is because you're the small little guy that nobody thought you'd ever make anything beyond track. And then you're going to prove to everybody. And so again, I believe that your strong why is directly attached with making sure that if you have a strong why, you're purposeful about what you want to do, then you're not going to quit no matter what.
100% agreement there. And I think in every single keynote, almost, I mentioned this subject matter because, like you said, and I have this saying that if your why is strong enough, the process to get there is not a challenge. You'll do whatever it takes. It doesn't matter what roadblock, what barrier, what obstacle, you will do whatever it takes. And so when people ask me, JJ, how did you at 157 pounds go down and hit 260-pound junior sale? Well, it was all tied to my why.
Yeah.
It was the means how I would take care of my family, and I kept proving people wrong, but it was what I wanted to do. So I agree with you. And so many people don't understand their why. And I always encourage them. I say, you got to peel the layers. It's like an onion has multiple layers. You got to keep asking yourself questions. Why do you want to do this? When you give the answer, why is that important? When you give the why is that, to try to get to the core. Because if you can get to the core and you know what that why is, you can become unstoppable.
Yeah. All right. Go to the next one. Sorry.
Yeah, so the next one is, and you'll love these are football analogies. What's your
Yeah.
game plan? What
Yeah.
is the game plan? As you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
every week we have a new game plan, and you meet so many people that have a goal, and I'm like, great, how are you going to get there? What's the strategy that you put in place to be able to achieve that goal? You cannot give a presentation without talking about doing the work. You and I know this, and you described something earlier about how many times you worked out when nobody was watching.
Yeah.
Athletes, that was in our DNA. And it's helping people, especially in the corporate world, because I speak a lot in the corporate world, helping them understand they have to be able to show that discipline, the ability to do what you need to do when you need to do it while nobody's watching. That's what we do as athletes, So, I take those points and I talk about mentorship, and I talk a lot about complacency, because the example I gave to you about Joe Montana, we meet so many people in the business world who've had successful careers. They've had great quarters, great years, great months, and they just get complacent. But as athletes in college or pro, we couldn't afford to get complacent, because if we got complacent, we got replaced.
Yep.
So it's challenging people to continue to push themselves to strive for excellence. So the book kind of revolves around that subject matter, and I basically wrote it for everybody.
No, I love that. One of the things that had a major impact on me in my life was John Wooden's Pyramid of Success. It's something that Coach James at the University of Washington taught us. And I've talked about this before, but there's 25 different blocks of individual and team goals to help anybody ascend to the pinnacle of success, whatever they're doing. And the very top rung is competitive greatness. And that really is all about the things you were just talking about, right? Which is doing your best when your best is required. And you can't do your best when your best is required if you haven't done the work. Again, going back to when I first, 6'2", 181 pounds, couldn't bench my weight. I was so far out of my league because I wasn't in a position at that time with my body, with my mind, with my heart, my soul, that I could compete against those guys at all these different schools. And so it took years and years and years to develop that. And that's what you're talking about, is putting in the work, figuring out what the why is, peeling back the onion, and then really make sure that you have that game plan, that roadmap that's going to help you get to where you want to be. But that, there's no easy path, right? So it's hard, but that's what makes the fruit so yummy. When you get to the summit, when I'm standing on Everest next year, that I put in the flipping work that has allowed me to get there. And for me, and I think you're the same way, and that's the reason why I'm going back and forth like this with you, is that I'm scoring the touchdown and all those things is fantastic. But what I love is, I truly can say this, I love the process. I love the process of the journey of getting there, of all the days. So, I'll be on Everest for 2 months this next year. And the final summit push will be a 14, 16-hour day. Will be hell on wheels. But it's between now, which is I've got 11 months before I go there, of practicing and working out and getting strength and push my body, all the way down to becoming as close to Superman as I possibly can, to put myself in that position to possibly, have that. And if I'm lucky enough to take the top, then that's where, you can look back on what the preparation that you did, not necessarily taking the top.
Yeah. I love that point, because you and I might be a lot alike, because I loved practice. I loved the process of training, whether it was track, whether it was football, because that's where you get better. That's where you hone your skills. And even to this day, I'm very methodical, whether I'm giving a presentation, the time I'll put in preparing for that keynote. It's just, we create habits. We have these habits. And as athletes, we have habits that made us successful in the athletic world. And we also have the ability to use these same habits to allow us to be successful in our business life and our personal life too. And I firmly believe in that saying, how you do anything is how you do everything. And listening to you, when you first got on, you told me you still work out and you're doing doubles. So am I. I mean, we're cut from the same cloth. We have those habits, and we want to be the best of the best at what we do. Whether we win or lose, as long as we prepare it hard and we give our best, we're happy about that.
I think you should ask your wife if you can come to Everest with me next year.
I was looking at your videos and I was like, I don't know.
No, it's all good. But okay, so in kind of running third base here, I want to talk to you last about what you are doing so much of your time, and that is out there speaking to many different people and filling their ears full of a path on the way they can lead their lives in a respectful way, in a positive way, and in a way that they can achieve what they want to achieve. So you've been doing this for a number of years. I assume you're doing this mostly in the U.S. Your themes are based around these 8 principles, or what?
Well, good question. So I have 4 signature keynotes, and it's taken me some time to kind of figure out the type of speaker I want to be, the type of content I want to share, and I think the type of content that audience respond better to me, because as you know, to play in the NFL, it takes a lot to get there. But we learn so much. We see so much, and there's so many lessons that we learn that can easily translate into the real world. And so I have 4 main keynotes. One is called Seizing Your Opportunities, which is basically kind of my book. The other one is called There Better Be an I in Team. And this is my leadership presentation. It's kind of a spin on there is no I in team, which we agree, but before you can lead a team, you got to be able to lead yourself. So it's about leadership specifically. Yeah. The next one is owning the championship mindset. And I just talk about the importance of having the right mindset before you do anything and the role that plays. And then the last one is for the youth called Every Day is Game Day, helping our young people understand you got to give your best every single day to be able to create the future that you want. And so what I love about what I do is it's just taking experiences from the past, and making them into teaching points and strategy points and action steps that people can take away and apply in their life.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Where can people find you? And I'm talking about your speaking, your reels, where they can connect with you, also where they can find your book.
Yeah, I would say go to jjbirden.com, go to my hub there, anything on speaking, anything connecting me social media. You buy my book from there. I sign all my books that are purchased from my website, but I'm very active on social media. I love to connect with the fans who were cheering for us back when we were, playing in the league, and just continue to establish those relationships, because I kind of consider myself an empowerment speaker. How can I empower people to do more, be more, and achieve more? And that's kind of where my messages really revolve around.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, listen, I'm really glad, number one, that we connected. Number two, we are brothers beyond just, the NFL in many different ways. I can see that right now. I think that will stand 364 days of the year, except for the one day the Huskies play the Ducks. And then I will put my purple and gold and sit on the other side of the stadium, as you will take your yellow and green and go to your side as well. So it's all good. Listen, I appreciate so much coming on the pod. You've been fantastic. And just the inspiration between your marriage, between taking on all these different kids, and how you decided to lead your life.
Yeah, well, thank you, Mark. I appreciate it, and it's great to make the connection. And you keep up the good work too, man. I'm gonna be rooting for you as you take on your next mountain. So go out there and crush it again.
I will try to. Okay, buddy. That is JG Birden. Thank you so much. Hey, thank you so much for dropping in and listening to another amazing episode of Finding Your Summit. Truly incredible people doing spectacular things in life, and I hope you were inspired just like I continue to be. Look, I am super grateful that you came in and subscribed to this pod, and would be more than appreciative if you gave the show a ratings and review on iTunes. Trust me, it matters. And then also go share it with your friends, of course. Okay, until next week, go do something great, and remember, it takes a little more to make a champion. Bye. Hey, and thank you so much for listening to the Find Your Summit podcast. We are so glad to have you along for this journey. And if you enjoy the show, please tell a friend, share it on iTunes, spread it to the planet. We're looking to broadcast this to every person that is out there, because, as you know, everybody has their own summit that they're going after. Okay, if you're looking to follow my journey, you can find that through my social links on markpattisionnfl.com. That's Mark, M-A-R-K, Pattison, P-A-T-T-I-S-O-N, NFL.com. So, until the next podcast, just remember, clear eyes, full hearts, and remember, it takes a little more to make a champion, so make it happen. Thank you. Bye.